All right, so let's go ahead and try to set up our view so that it can access the global state in the local props. I'm going to jump into the content view. And the first thing we need in the content view is access to the store. Now, the good thing is that the store is actually part of the environment object. So I can simply use the environment object property wrapper and say that give me the store whenever my view is ready. So there we go. We should be able to get the environment object. Now, if you're working with the previews, which are displayed on the canvas on the right-hand side, and if you're interested in working through your app using the previews, then it will be a good idea to inject the environment object in the previews also. So what does that mean? Is that you will go to your previews and you will create an instance of the store, passing in the reducer, which in our case will be app reducer, passing in the state, which will be app state, and passing in the middlewares. So middlewares, which will be coming out to be the movies middleware. There we go. And you also need to make sure that you are returning the content view and injecting the environment object. So environment object, which is, in this case, is a store. You can see that the IntelliSense is not really helping me out right now, but if you close your project and start opening it again, then you will see the IntelliSense or the suggestions starts coming back. All right, so I have relaunched my Xcode, and now hopefully we will get the IntelliSense or suggestions coming back. So what we want to do is we want to implement some sort of a local state, local props, where we can use those to dispatch events and also access the global state. We have already done that before in a different scenario. So let's go ahead and get started with creating a local structure, which is props. Keep in mind that we are creating this structure, which is props, inside the content view. Now this props is going to hold the data that the view actually needs. And one of those things will be a collection of movies. So we're going to go ahead and create a variable or a property, which is movies, which is a collection, an array of movies. One other thing that this props will do is dispatch certain events. And one of those events will be on search, meaning when we click a button or do something to perform the search. So let's go ahead and do that. And now we have on search, which is going to take a closure, which takes a string and returns nothing. The next thing we need to do is we need to map the global state to the local props. For this, we are going to create a function called map, and we're going to be passing in the state, which in this case will be the movie state, and it is going to return you props, the one that we just created earlier on. So let's go ahead and return props. I'm just going to say props, and I need to pass in the movies. So we are going to ask the store to give us the movies, or the global state to give us the movies, so state.movies. And for the search part, we are going to get some sort of a keyword from the onSearch function, onSearch. We're going to get a keyword like Batman or Spider-Man or Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, whatever. And then we are going to use the store to dispatch an event. What kind of an event is completely up to you, but since we are interested in fetching the movies, we're going to use fetch movies and pass in the keyword. Perfect. The next thing we need to do is we need to actually call the map function. So there are many different places where you can call. I'm going to go ahead and do it right over here. So let props equals to map and passing in the state, which in this case is store.state.movies. And we will return For right now, we just return the text. We're not really using the props right now. We will eventually, but right now we're not using it. So what we want to do right now is we also want to make sure that when we call the onSearch function or the closure, which is belonging to the local props, and pass in some hard-coded value like Batman, then we can get all the data and we can display all the data. So how would we do that? Let's go ahead and check out in the next lecture. But before we do that, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors, which is AzamSharp.School. AzamSharp.School is one of the largest catalogs for iOS development videos. And you can see all of these different courses: MV pattern, full stack iOS development, reactive programming using Combine framework, programming macOS using SwiftUI, test-driven development, Reality Kit, machine learning, building Apple Reminders app, and so much more. Now, you can purchase these courses with their individual pricing, but what most people end up doing is there's so many courses, so they just go with the membership plan. $25 monthly, or which is more popular is the annual plan, which is $249. You're going to save some money if you go with the annual plan, and both of these plans will have access to 22 comprehensive courses, 130 plus hours of videos, 50% off on the workshop, monthly Q&A on Zoom. This is only for the pro members, and so much more. All right, so check out the workshops, check out the courses, AzamSharp.School. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. In the last lecture, we created our mapStateToProps, which is going to return us the local props, which we can use in our view to perform an action and to display the data. But right now we haven't really fetched anything. So let's go ahead and first open up our canvas so we can see that what we are trying to build. Let's go ahead and resume it. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to load all the movies when the page actually loads. Now, obviously, we want to type in something in the text box, but we'll figure out the text box later on. So I'm going to go over here and create a vertical stack or a V stack. Let's go ahead and remove the return part of it. Inside this V stack, we're going to build our interface. First, make sure that we have the navigation. So I'm going to call the embed in navigation. And I'm also going to call a function called navigation title so we can have some title of our page, which in this case is movies. Now inside this V stack, I'm going to go over here and say props.movies, ID of the movie, meaning they are separated by, they're identified by something called an IMDb ID, which is unique to all the movies. Movie in, and let's go just try to display the actual movie dot title. Now this is not really going to display anything because we haven't really fired any function to display the movies. So let's say that how we can do that. I'm going to go ahead and say on appear, and I can say props dot on search, and for the search I'm just going to search for the movie called Batman. This means that when the view actually loads, we are hard coding it for now so that we can see that if it even displays it on the page or not. Let's go ahead and run, and you can see the movies are being displayed. This is actually coming from the actual API. I don't really like this separation of the box over here with the light gray background. So I'm going to use a different list style, which will be a plain list style, which is going to remove that box. Now it looks much better. It will be a good idea to also have some sort of an image being displayed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this text inside a horizontal stack. Now to display the image based on the URL, we don't really have any controls in SwiftUI to do that. But luckily, we have created a control which is called the URL image control. So we can use the URL image control. URL image, and it takes in a URL as a string. We already have the URL because we have access to the movie. We can simply pass in the URL, and there we go. Now this obviously looks a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to go ahead and frame it to a certain width and height. So width, let's say, take 100, and height 125. So it kind of looks like a poster. And we can also say a corner radius of, let's say, 10 to make it a little bit rounded. For the edge stack, we can also perform an alignment, and we can say the alignment will be top so that everything is kind of like on the top. But the view is completely up to you, however you want to display it. Right now, you can see that in the list, we have all of this code. We can probably refactor it into a subview. So let's go ahead and select the edge stack and command click, and you can say extract subview. This is going to extract the subview. Let's go ahead and rename our subview to movie cell, and we are going to be passing in a particular movie because the movie cell depends on the movie. You can see it requires the poster and it requires the movie title. So let's go ahead and update our movie cell. We will say movie and movie so that it will be able to be passed easily. The result is absolutely the same. It's not going to change the result, but now we have refactored our movie displaying cell into a different view, which is called the movie cell. You can even put this inside a separate file. That's perfectly fine. If you think this is going to get really crazy, really big, then probably it will be a good idea to move it into a separate file. Right now, I don't think it's going to get any bigger than this, so I'm just going to leave it right there. This is great, and this is working perfectly fine. But we didn't really want it to load all the movies when the page actually loads. We wanted to load the movies when someone types in the text box. So let's go to the next lecture and see that how we can perform the fetch action when somebody types in a text box and they return or press the return key. Let's go ahead and start adding the text box. So we're going to go to the vStack, and I'm going to go ahead and add a text field. It will say search, and for the text, we are going to do a bindable expression, which means that whenever we type something in the text box, it's going to go into a field called search. We don't really have that field or a state property called search, so let's go ahead and add that property. Just going to go over here and say state private var search string like this. So now we have a state property which is search. The next thing we need to do is we need to perform on editing change. It's not appearing over here, so let me go ahead and type it again. Sometime you can see that it doesn't appear. Okay, so the one that we're looking for is the third one, which comes up with the actual string. So I'm just going to say search, the bindable expression, which in this case all the values will go to the search state property. The on editing change, which means that whenever we are typing something in the text box, this function or this closure is going to get fired. And the final one is the on commit, which is this part. On commit is fired whenever you press the return key, whenever you're done with the text box. And it is at that moment where you want to perform the search. So props.onSearch and passing in the search. We'll also go ahead and make sure that the text field style that we're using is actually rounded border text field style. It's just going to look a little bit nice. And we can also add a bit of a padding. Let's go ahead and update our preview to see if it works. Okay, looks pretty nice. You can see the search box over there. We don't really need this on up here because we were just using it to check something out, but now we don't need it anymore. Okay, let's go ahead and give it a try. I'm going to go ahead and run the app, and I'm going to start with the Batman, press enter, and we get all the Batman movies. We will go ahead and maybe add something different. Let's say we'll say Hobbit. We get all the Hobbit movies. Okay, we'll say Lord of the Rings and enter, and now we get all the Lord of the Rings movies. The reason that we are able to get all the Lord of the Rings movies, because it even have spaces between the words, is that if you remember correctly, in the middleware, we were calling get all movies, the web service, but we called it using URL encode. This means all those spaces between the movie called Lord of the Rings will be replaced by percentage encoding, which is required. And if you don't do this, then you will never get the successful request. So this is done. We can actually display the movies. This is great. Let's go back to our content view again. And this is working perfectly fine now. The next thing that we want to do is we want to fetch the details of the movie. Now, let me go ahead and show you in the next section that what we are talking about and where's the endpoint to fetch the details of the movies. Well, you will be glad to know there is a completely separate endpoint, meaning a URL, where you can go and fetch the details of the movies. So let's go ahead and check it out in the next section.